everyone, this is going to be a quick review on the Cold Steel La Fontaine Sword of War. The pros of this sword is that the stitching is very good. Very even, consistent stitching on both the scabbard and the grip. I like the added protection of the complex guard. I really like that. Definitely gives you plenty of hand protection. Protects your finger if you're holding it like this, and gives you even more hand protection if you don't put your finger over the guard. The grind and fullers of the blade are very even, and that's pretty much where the positive remarks stop. This sword out of box came extremely dull. The edge was about 1 millimeter thick, so this took a lot of work to finally get this to a good working edge. Now I'm sure some of you will remember the cutting test that I did with this sword, and it was not a great cutter. To be fair, I gave it a 30-degree edge. I have since backed that back to a 25-degree edge. Many will say probably that's what this should have been from the get-go. However, I will have to remind you this. Either way, this sword came pretty much blunt. So no matter what edge I gave it, it's better than what it came with out of box, and it cut better than it would have with, being blunt out of box. Generally speaking, when sharpening, I don't recommend using carbide, because carbide will take off a lot of steel all at once, and you can basically ruin a sword that way because it's removing so much steel. However, in the case of this sword, I did at first try using a carbide sharpener because it had so much steel that needed removing that I figured it would save me a lot of time. In the end, even with the carbide sharpener, I quickly realized this would take way too long to sharpen, so I ended up finally buying a work sharp, which I meant to be buying anyways. This just gave me a reason to buy it sooner. And even after getting the work sharp, this took me over an hour to get a good working edge on it. When sharpening, I put it on high speed, which many of you probably will say, wait, that's too much heat that's going to be building up on the blade, and I did use the coarsest belt it had. What I will remind you is this is a very long blade, so the chances of overheating something like this is not that likely. In fact, I was checking constantly, and it never even felt warm. When trying to find someone to sharpen this, I asked a local blade maker, and he didn't want any part of it. He said he had too many instances of people bringing swords to sharpen, and in the end the steel was just too soft to be able to hold an edge. Now, he didn't say that was a problem with this particular sword, but he did say that was a problem with some swords that people brought, and then of course they get mad because it's not holding the edge. So he said as a result he doesn't sharpen blades like this. So if you are able to find someone to sharpen it for you, that might be, a good thing to just have someone else do it for you. However, in my case, I couldn't find anyone local to sharpen this, and I really didn't want to have to pay the money to have this shipped out and done. That's why I just did it myself on my work sharp. So much steel had to be removed that I actually felt a difference in the weight of the sword after sharpening, which leads me to the next problem with this sword. This sword is entirely too heavy. The weight of this sword is 4 pounds 12.5 ounces, and that's after sharpening. So this is just really heavy, even for its size. The weight of the guard alone is 1 pound 1.1 ounces, and the pommel is 13.1 ounces. When you weigh all the fittings, the guard, the pommel, and the little collar at the end of the handle, the fittings alone weigh just under 2 pounds. And then when fully disassembled, the blade alone weighs 2 pounds 9.5 ounces. So this is a very heavy blade. It's a very thick blade. This blade does not have much flex to it. As you can see, it has a little bit of flex, but not very much flex. The blade length from the tip down to the crossguard right here is 37.5 inches. The grip length from the guard to the inside of the pommel right here is 11 5/8 inches. And the total handle length from the grip to the absolute end of the pommel is 13 7/8 inches. The point of balance is 4 inches away from the guard. Right now I have the pommel turned on a couple turns just to be sure that the grip doesn't slide off as I show you the fit of the guard. As you can see, the fit is very loose. Even just twisting it, you can see it's rattling. So the only thing keeping this guard from rattling is the compression of the grip from the pommel. That's it. This is not secured independently. It looks like they tried to glue it because there was definitely remnants of glue, and obviously it didn't work. Now the good news though is the fact that when the pommel is completely turned down all the way, there is no rattle whatsoever. So that's definitely a good thing. Just gotta keep the pommel tight. However, it's just another thing to keep note on this sword. Speaking of the fittings, they have some kind of a cheap looking paint finish, as you can see, and you can also see visible welds. So I'm not too fond of that. The pommel and the fittings on the scabbard actually look pretty good, but the paint on the guard just looks very cheap, and I'm not fond of that personally. Another small criticism is the fact that between the grip and the guard right here, it may be hard to see, but there is some space. This is not even. No matter which way I put the grip on, there is some space there. So that's another issue. Small criticism, doesn't really affect performance, but looks-wise, it doesn't look great. The final thing I'll say, and this is more of a nitpick, is that overall, I think this is a very plain-looking sword. The black blade finish has definitely grown on me. However, the black blade finish with the black fittings and the black leather, it's very plain looking. If you like the look of like a tactical sword, I suppose, then I think you will probably like the look. However, in my opinion, I think that either red or brown leather would look better than black. It would give some contrast and, would just have a very nice look. However, that's aesthetics. That's more personal preference, but that's just my opinion. Overall, with this sword, I just can't recommend it. It is too much money for what you're getting. It's way too heavy. Even if this sword cut tatami mats like a lightsaber, which obviously it didn't, but let's for a minute assume that it did, this sword is still so heavy that it actually feels clumsy in the hand. So that's a big no-go. And some people say, just get stronger and it won't be a problem. Well, the problem is that's really not the answer for a sword that is this heavy. Some people have actually gotten injured using a sword that's too heavy, and I don't mean cutting into themselves, I mean actually damaging the muscles or tendons. You can get injured using something that is too heavy. And then, as I mentioned, comes the fact that this sword is just really dull out of box. So other than having to deal with the weight, you're going to have to find a way to sharpen this or have someone sharpen it for you. And it's not just a little touch-up. A little touch-up, depending on the price, I can, give it a pass if it's just something that needs a little bit of touch-up, and that's all. This needs the edge completely reprofiled out of box. And for this price, I just don't think that's acceptable. I personally am probably going to sell this sword just because I don't get any enjoyment out of this sword. I was considering keeping it just because I like the overall look of the sword, but personally, I don't really have a place for wall hangers, and that's pretty much what this sword would end up being. A very expensive wall hanger. Speaking of the price, this sword goes for around $300. Even for $300, there's better deals that can be had than this. So that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I'll see you next video. See ya.